so once we get our prop set up, we have a spine ramp behind us. You want plenty of space between you, and we are using a little wall space today, but you don't have to be right at the wall for about 3/4 of the class, okay? So before you lounge back on your bolster, like so cozy, I want you to sit right in front of it. So you have the short end of the bolster next to your sacrum. So when you sit in front of the bolster, take a couple blocks, and your legs are probably going to be feet together, knees out. It's probably going to be best if you have that balance with your feet together. So add a couple blocks underneath the legs and position the blocks to support your knees, so that you want the knees to have enough of a lift that you'll find out. You want them under the knees, not really under the upper thighs. We'll explore this in a bit. Take a belt. It's buckled up, so you got a big loop. Make sure the loop is very big. Okay. So you got kind of this double bounded belt. Hold on to the belt and see if you can go upward with your arms so that you're stretching out a little bit with the ribs, a little bit with the armpit chest, but with that motion of the arms lifting versus trying to tighten and grip and yank away at all the breathing cycles. See if you can simply go upward arms. That's it, like kind of upward dog, but upward arms. So when the arms lift and the back wants to round, feel if you can work the weight of the knees towards the blocks. This isn't easy. I know this is a bit of a core exercise. And then move the belt just forward of the chest, so you're holding the belt tight. Inhale, belly relaxes. And exhale, lift the arms back up. Okay, we'll just do this one more time with this belt orientation. So the emphasis here is on getting some circulation into the breathing muscles. So there is some restrictive angles in the muscles when you do this pattern. There's some intensity. Okay, now you're going to loosen up the belt. So you've got the big loop. Bring it overhead and then wrap the belt, not the buckle part, but the belt around your feet. Scoop them up. Okay, the feet are still on the ground. They don't have to be levitating, but you'll slide the buckle so it's, easy reach. And I would make the belt fairly firm around the back of the pelvis, so it's really at the eyebrows of the buttocks where it's held. And again, those blocks are pretty, they're just outside of the knees. Yeah, so I kind of I'm beginning to enjoy the basics and then ways of balancing our circulation. So get a sandbag if you have one and place it across your feet. Okay. Now, as you lower back, use your hands on the floor or your hands on the bolster. And then as you guide your spine back, you might mentally take a note that it's the spine that's guiding into its natural arches when you form this first shape. Because the first shape is when we hold it for a while. And now once that spine has that natural experience of arching, there might be a tendency to move the tail under, to kind of improve, and find more ease. But the key is to let the natural arch, let your arms relax besides you. Allow that natural arch to be kind of preferred and to gather the circulation in the chest and the ribs. Eyes could close. And sense the layer of inhalation and exhalation. And the abdomen is motioning with the breath. Now the shoulders gravitationally center back, but there's likely some gripping right in our shoulders. So if you can use your props, especially holding you up, and then the shoulders center back on the props. It's a perfect support path with your sand centering your feet, the belt connecting the pathways of the legs into the hips. And let the left arm simply cross over the chest to the right side and bring the right hand to that left elbow. And if it's simple for you just to let that right hand press the left arm towards the body, right? And I encourage you to think towards body versus tugging the arm across town. See if you can manage that balance in the left side of the shoulder and centering the back of the skull. And if the breath is kind of frozen on that left side of the rib cage due to the movement of the left shoulder, noticing if you can add circulation into the left side of the ribs instead of gripping. Okay, now switch sides. So just let the right arm cross in front of the chest, let the left hand touch that right elbow. And when there's motion, I don't know, one side could feel a little more response than the other in parts of the arm or the back. But this would be key to letting your head rest back on the blanket. And if the chin is really tilting too high for you, you might work on centering the neck, kind of nodding your head a little side to side to support the length in the spine. Okay, now release the pressure with that left hand to the right arm. Slide the hands now together, interlacing. That's kind of natural. And as you interlace the fingers, turn the palms as they lift towards the ceiling with limitation. And so just find, limitation here. No need to go higher. And then bend your elbows and feel when the elbows bend, you move the arms back over. I don't want to say overhead because that just gives us an idea that we should be somewhere specific. But since you're generally doing this with eyes relaxed, maybe some passive looking at the screen here, but I encourage you to kind of plug into your body sensations and explore those on your terms, right? So some of this is guidance that's somewhat helpful, but not all, right? You might find your own shapes, your own pathways that need to be attended to. So now that my arms are united at the roots of the fingers, let the arms feel where their full extent is supporting your breathing. So for me, it's past time that this is helping my breath. I sort of am just holding it because it's supposedly a shape to do. So you might bring the arms straight towards the ceiling and feel the ribs expand. Anytime we can do breathing through the nose on that inhale, and ribs expand, 3-dimensional breath. And then relax the grip and the arms out to the sides. Find where it's an easy setting with your hands. Let's be here for about 12 breaths. I'm going to complete this pose, the dimension of the posture, and resting the face. And feel where the balance of the centerpiece of the body is, where the chest centers. Now you slide the hands in and unbuckle. Bring the knees to point up. Now there's a little drag on the feet if you have sand, right? That's a little pull. So you have to kind of scoot your feet out from beneath the sand and slide them towards the center of the body. The belt could be nearby. I think we will be using it again at some point. So you'll scoot your blocks out to the side and you'll either have a ball or you could use your sandbag besides your left upper thigh. You could try the block, right? So you can add this at the upper outer left. I would say it's more hip that you place that connection, but you can use any of these items. And when you press it in, I suppose, you know, it might even work doing this would be like a toilet paper roll that's like halfway, you know, depends on the size, I guess, but you can kind of smush it. It gives a little bit of spacer. Okay, so lift the right foot, hook it to the left knee, lean the left leg over into that ball, roll, sandbag, block. The nice thing about something that's mushy is that it doesn't feel so uncomfortable on the skin. The pressure from a block can be, it depends on how soft the foam is that you have. You could also even put, you know, a towel in there, just a spacer so your legs don't flop to the floor. Hold the right knee with the left hand. Yeah, the sand is not necessarily a big piece of this, although I am kind of scooting my outer left foot to the ground. So I roll to the side of my left foot versus pushing the heel part down. And then when you hold onto the right knee with the left hand, let the right arm either stretch back besides your head or stretch it out on the floor. Right, and for me, it feels better out on the floor. You know, I'm interested in ways to increase the circulation in the heart, the lungs, and sometimes that passive position of a limb with other areas not too passive is nourishing, right, for those organs. So, and also the muscles, right, heart muscle. So when you feel that you're holding onto that knee, and there's probably some pressure into the right hip, some circulation boost, breathing. If there's a little edge on the left thigh where you want to kind of push it down further, you could sort out if you've got the ball, right, you could kind of scoot it a little farther to the side of that left leg. You can push it in more. But you need something that's just besides that hip that lifts your leg slightly up off the ground. Okay, now come back in center, uncross, right foot down, left foot up, cross it to the right knee, change sides. So the right side has a ball or a block or something that's wedged on the very outer side of the right hip, upper outer thigh. And when you lean your body weight into that, you want to feel that this opposite side that's not getting pushed into has a circulation boost. So I hold onto the left knee with the right hand, and then I just go across, right? I'm trying to pull my left knee towards the right side, and the left arm can go back. It can go down to the side. You can experiment with the pulley of the breath. To me, that's the most interesting part, is the breath experience once I settle. Not just that I'm breathing, but the movement cycle of the breath in the diaphragm, in the rib cage. And by now your back has been in this arch for a while. So hopefully it's starting to get used to that cycle. But if it's difficult for you, it's achy for you, something to work on is the chest opening, you know, opening up through the rib cage in general. You know, with a few more moments here, notice if the side of that right foot is resting. If you're pushing into the right foot, try to lean to the side of it. And then feel where the muscles into the left upper leg. You don't have to do any naming, but you can feel the grippiness, the hippie grippiness, right? It's like hip grips. And then we keep the position. And as you work your way back to center, let's take if you've got your sand down by your feet, just kind of a little heavy, push it over to the side and add the block under the pelvis. Keep your head back, lift up the hips, slide a flat block under the back of your pelvis, stretch your feet down and bring your arms to reach with the belt overhead. Now the belt could be in a big loop, it could be unbuckled, and so it's kind of a double grip, which I like a lot. And then as you stretch back, if you have the support of the wall, it's excellent. Couldn't think of anything better to do than to push a wall in this position. But if you don't, you want to work with flexing through the feet. But the wall is a nice support. It's certainly exciting into the bones, right? So you have that little bit of resistance, that weight bearing, but it's mostly the resistance on this one. And a few more breaths here. And if this one starts to feel like, my chin is lifting, my neck has too much stretch, you can take the blanket on the top away and then feel. This is a little more appropriate, right, for our neck. So less blanket bulge under the neck for this position. So take it one more focus here. If you need to move the blanket away, give it a try. If you don't like to have the legs straight, you can have the legs bent. Perfect option. Okay, now as we shift and let go of the belt, take it over to your side and lift up the hips to slide the block away. And we'll roll to a side, any side. And when you come up, you'll be in front of your bolster. You can turn to any side in the room you want, but what I want you to take is your belt and have it so it's unbuckled, big loop, actually no loop, sorry, no loop. Scoop up your feet and see if you can push them forwards. Okay, so if you're unsure about the angle in the spine, when I push my feet in front, let's not all do it at the same time, or maybe we can take little breaks. But when you lift up into the feet, for many of us, this is a bit of a core challenge, not necessarily just stomach area, but in the hip flexors, the coordination. So alternate the bending and the touch down of the feet and work on upright seated shape. So the natural angle of the spine. And then on your exhale, you lean back and use the bolster behind you as a little support. It's a little cushion. Now, when you come down with your feet, the bolster might not be quite as helpful, but you could sit back closer to it if that is a nice edge, and the knees probably separate quite a bit just to boost the legs back up. So take a couple more of these. Feel the change between the feet down, the spine, natural arch extending, and then the lift of the feet. I keep catching myself using my hip flexors mostly. So if I can get a hold of that belt, get a full pull, when my elbows go wide, and then get a reach of your feet in front. See if you can push farther forward, access through the legs. You can always take a pose pass on this variation if you need to take a breather. Give it a try. And then as you lower down through the feet, and all of that in the middle has been kind of riled up, you'll slide the belt away. And let's take a turn to our left side. So what we'll do is we'll pivot left, and we'll turn the bolster across the mat so it's horizontal. And the sand is nearby, or whatever you're using for weight, like a bag of rice works too. Of course, a bag of sand is great. But as you add your two blankets, you're going to lay them down with a little space between the bolster and the blankets. Okay? You don't have to be close to the wall for this one. I don't think it's that helpful. So, a block overhead on the other side of the blankets. That's going to be what we call overhead today. Have it high up. And then I like the ball on the inside of my right knee. You can also use a block pretty easily on this one. This one, it's not such a big deal if I use the block instead. I would put it at the low setting. I might put it kind of high up, because I don't want it to push into the bonier part of the knee, right? So the ball is just cushion. Yeah. All right. So lean into the left side, and we're going to try this side angle. As the sand is on the side of the body, you could put it across, and so be across the hip. You could go straight down the side, closer to the hip or closer to the chest, the rib. And then as you reach over, yeah, if you go slow enough, you can feel the difference in your upper respiratory tree, kind of subtly exchange the breath emphasis in a side stretch. And then I use the block under my right hand. If you have a chair, you can use a chair. That's actually quite comforting. It's a little more height. It's easier on the shoulder. And then if you let that left arm relax between the bolster and the blankets. Yeah, the arm doesn't have to be on something. You could put it, well, it's going to be on something, I suppose. It could be on the side of your body. Could be resting across on the bolster. And when the arm finds its destination of side reach, let the weight of your head relax, maybe closer to the left ear versus the back of the skull. Yeah, you might have a habit of rolling onto the back of the head on this one. So feel if you can keep this as a posture of creating some balance with the muscles instead of like, oh, I like to sleep like this, so I'm gonna roll my head back. See if you can stay with the idea of doing a practice here. So you feel like the armpit is open on one side, and the other side there's a little bit of compression. And simply feel the movement chamber of the ribs. Just easing the flow of breath. Relaxing the face, the jaw. Noticing if the movement of breath is, still kind of locked in the front of the body. It may take time to get this side to move with, especially if you have weight on your ribs, right? Because that's a weight training for the breathing muscles. But I'll give two options for the counterpose between the two sides. So some of you will want to stay working with your ribs and the breathing cycle and the strength for the respiratory muscles. So then I'll give this option that you will roll onto the back to horizontal chest opener. The second option is going to be cat-cow and a little more movement balance. So here's the one option. And if you find, oh, I can do this, but my back is a little tender, then you'll insert a block under the pelvis like we did earlier. But the difference is you've got this horizontal rib support. You would add sand across your ribs if you do this one as well. Something here. Stretch open, let your eyes relax. So that's doesn't mean you're the more passive variation. It just is maybe you want to keep working on that respiratory coordination. Okay, and the other group, or me, maybe I'll be alone on it, is going to try hands knees. You can have a blanket under your knees if you need. Hands between the bolster and the blanket, so the fingers spread out, so you have a nice kind of platform here with hands and knees, toes relaxed. And then round your back into cat and feel when you scoop, you feel the hip scoop, you feel the upper back lengthen. And then inhale. This is extension of the spine, arching. Okay, take one more cycle of rounding and arching. Breathing, rounding, we'll do one more. Now, next time you arch, you're gonna hook the toes under and lift the knees and see if you can alternate walking out through the backs of the legs. Now, if you're in horizontal chest opener on the side, I should do that. Well, you could join. We'll be doing plenty of possibilities with this structure coming up. So find what's good in the moment for you. So alternate the pulse of the legs. Feel into the calves. Feel the difference from one to the next. There's probably some interesting layer of change from each calf to the other that you're stretched through. All the circulation to the face here, right? Skin cells of the face, circulation, downward dog. Okay, and then bend the knees, and that's a different respiratory experience than the horizontal chest opener. It is still a work, So now change for all of us to side sage on the right hip. So come down to the right side or shift over. If you are already comfortable with that ball on the inside of the left leg, add it, and then the sand, and you just get into these ways of exposing the breathing muscles, right? So the intercostal. So there's not many other times in the day that we can really present this support for them, supporting the lymph drainage. You may have some things that you do health-wise for that, but for now we're working on this. So with the side support, I like the weight training for my intercostals with the sand high. Some of you might prefer the traction in the hip with the sand low. Okay, right side of your head down, left arm over, and explore where that felt sense of light movement is in your hip. You don't have to push that left leg far back, but you could use your right foot if you've got the ball and kind of push into the ball and see if you can help that leg move back. Kind of fun to do. And when that length occurs, that psoas on the left side, you get this, you receive this interesting pull right through that left side band. So when that left arm is overhead, rest the side of your left, the whole left side into the props. Simple, slow motion of breath. And breathing is movement. Now feel where that right side is committed. And we're just going to work up the skeletal design here. So you're going to keep some of the same places weight bearing coming up, okay? So with that left arm, if you have a block overhead, you're using that, I would move it over to the side before you come up. And then feel that left shoulder, maybe roll it back. And then once you start to lean to the right, this time we're going to actually move our bolster in the front towards our feet. So I want you to slide any sand away, roll to the right. It's a little different today. And we'll switch the bolster to the front. So be a little cautious of your knees here. Do any kind of zigzag movement you need to get your knees out of the way. And then take your blankets in. And let's move so that we're sitting. I want you to have your blankets kind of mid-mat. So you'll be able to stretch the legs back behind the blankets eventually. I think this should be enough space behind me. Let's see, you can still see me. Okay, well, that's probably helpful, huh? Okay, what leg did we just have bending? We have the right leg bending, so I want you to bend the right leg. Find the leg that has the R on it and take it and bend it. And then the bolster's in the front. And what you'll do is you'll tilt it up. Now, if you've got a bolster that's, hopefully firm enough that will take this resistance. The right foot is touching on the inside of the left leg. And I'll just add a sandbag to the top of the right thigh. You see that okay? I'll pivot myself so you can see. So my right foot to the inside left leg, sandals on the right thigh. Bolster forward. Okay. All right. So you can put a ball under your right knee or a block if that's hurting your knee, or you feel like it's an extra intensity. And then when you tilt forward, balance the muscle mass in your back, right? So some of the idea here is when you lean, kind of gravity has you in your core organs. So you want to let that area be relaxed. You're not trying to force an unnatural inner experience. So when you lean forward, this is helping get the legs down. You let the head lower down between the arms. And then feel the reach of the arms, right? Feel the reach of the arms forward to that bolster. And the ribs expand. And center. Now, if this is interesting, but you want more, you could put your elbows on the short end of the bolster. And I would be gentle on the movement forward. So you stretch your triceps, hands have to kind of come together. Otherwise, they would fold into each other. So this, I like this a lot in the triceps, just to get this motion into the shoulder. Okay, so another 5 to 10 breaths here. Depends on the length of your breath. Okay, so you're working on the upper lobes of the lungs. Okay, now you got this far with the arms, even if the hands are on the bolster, you got this motion up out of your back. Okay, lower the bolster down, place the left foot on, and this rib area, we want to keep a little bit of life here. Okay, so use the bolster when you twist today. So even though this is, I don't know what you would think, it's elementary variation, but the one thing I noticed is if my foot is on the ground, I try to take my twist, I twist a little lower my spine, which is a big no-no, right? We want to keep our spine twists in the thoracic, in the middle. We want to keep it away from the low back. So this is helpful, right, for space between the vertebrae. So turn left and bring the right hand to that left leg. It could be below the knee, it could be at the knee, it could be above the knee. And stretch your ribs to the left. I know the idea is I stretch my arm back, but you slow down by breathing with the rotation. And feel if your hand needs to be on a block, you could add one. If you feel like you're struggling to feel the ground support, find a block. There's a block near you, I'm sure. Place something firm and flat that's under your hand. Okay, so when you rotate, can you work with kind of a subtle arch? So not trying to make a spike in your arch, but general motion turning. But so it becomes like muscle memory. not like only yoga class memory. You might close your eyes and think, oh, okay, I've been here a while doing this practice, and then I'm halfway into it. So when you feel the rotation and the musculature that binds to keep the twist, see if you can back off a little bit with pressing and turning and come forward, but keep the hand onto that leg if possible. No one has to, but turn forward with the heart. And then feel where the hand is behind you. Lift up at the collarbone. So the sternum has a lift, the collarbone's spread out. And then as you inhale, belly relaxes. And exhale, turn to the left. Take one last turn. Maybe close your eyes so you don't anticipate going further, but maybe further inside to calm. Okay, now turn back forward. Take the block away from behind you if it's there. And then two different options here, depending on needs. So some of us will prefer this version where we take two blocks on the sides of the bolster, grounded, and lean forward. Others will take pigeon with the right leg forward. So this way on each side, we will be doing a different hip. You know, the pigeon will do the right hip, the others will do left hip this side. But your choice. So if you decide to go back in towards pigeon, see if you can keep it a little more of this upper. If it gets tiresome and you find that's exhausting to do, you could certainly lower down and bring your forehead down too, but don't go lower than the bolster height, right? So you're not like starting to cave into the spine. But if you're here, you're kind of in the same arch for those in pigeon pose, huh? It's not that different. The difference is it's a different gravity around the joint. It's a different pulley system around the knee. Of course, it's the other knee for those that aren't doing pigeon, but I feel an appreciation for both. Depends on the day, depends on how the knee is that day sometimes. But when you're leaning into it, let the breath stay rather active in the rib cage. Yeah, let your body kind of live in this fresh state of breathing deeply, fully. Okay, now those of us that are in this slightly lower position, right? If you're in pigeon, you're probably lower. Even if you're here, you're a little bit lower than the others. Try to stay with that balance into the back of the pelvis. So instead of trying to push it a certain way, just see what naturally happens. If the knee hurts, I would come out of it. I don't think that would be wise, right? So let the knee keep grinding away. This one might be easier, right? If you have something under your knee and lean forward. Okay, so those of us in pigeon, come back forward. We're all going to meet in a wide angle. So we'll feel that right leg, yay, the knee gets to stretch out, left leg. It's still good to get that blood flow into them. Put the blocks under the upper, kind of the upper thigh, right underneath, above the knee, above the back of the knee. Okay, so under the leg, you're going to hold on if the legs hold there, so that maybe it's a little pressure on the legs, but I don't think the block is going to cause any damage here. So you're kind of you have a little float up because you get two blankets. Oh, pretty easy. So when I take the bolster this time and I lean forward, feel where the spine naturally pulls in and elongates. And instead of trying to dunk your head down, unless you're feeling sleepy, see if you can keep a little lift for a few more moments. Okay, what I'm hoping is that you can feel where the ribs have some pull, there's some pressure, right? Not just with breathing, but with direction of the bones. And then the abdomen is relaxed, so the diaphragm muscle can relax here. It's kind of the best of both worlds. Okay, we keep this idea, but we bend the left leg, okay? And you could put a ball or just the sandbag on the left thigh on this side, so you can change it up for yourself how you want to add your props or no adding. You could just change the left leg to bending, the right leg out. Kind of like this block in the right leg. It's hard to take it away, but take it away if you can so you feel a little difference in the movement of the back of the knee, unless you love the block, and lean into it. A little less time on this side since we've already done enough of the forward motion, but if you want to put your elbows onto the bolster edge or ledge and lean into it. Now, if you're not using the shorter arm variation with the elbows in the fuller arm reach, now feel if the motion of the head lowers down between them. Breathing. And I want you to find some energy in the arms that is directly, you feel the response in the muscles from the pressing. So I push. So I get blood flow into them. And it's about alignment. Even if you do lots of other exercise or yard work or whatever you might be doing that pushes these areas, use it so you're consciously working on the balance internally. And then as you lower down the bolster, or you just drop it, bring the right foot on top. And then from those muscles having a little bit of heat in them, turn to the right, left hand to right knee. And with that rotation, this right shoulder might be trying to roll in. So if this is occurring, you have a rounded shoulder piece, place a block behind you. You can reach it farther back. I would kind of look in your peripheral vision. Can you see the shoulder? Right, it rolled, it's rolling in. So, you know, I'm not saying yours is rolling in, but feel what it's like to get the shoulder blade towards the middle of your back. If it's a little much on the neck, like you go, wow, it's up in my trapezius now, it's gripping my upper back. You could tilt your left ear to the shoulder. It's a lifetime of work, huh? So feel where the ribs turn to the right. Try to keep moving to the right side. I know there's probably an end range that you're going to find. And take that end range and breathe slow and deep. Okay, this time we'll take it a few more moments without going forward. If you need to come back forward and recenter and turn right, take that option. Okay, those of us that are going to do the seated version for the hip will stay with the two blocks to the front. Those that'll take pigeon will move the block away from, well, actually, we all should move our blocks forwards. Anyhow, so you could be here, or if you did pigeon last side, you should repeat it on the second one, because then you'd be doing the other leg. It'd be a little off balance if you did one on this on one side and pigeon on the other. But it's your practice. So if you want to do both of these poses, you could stay with this for a little bit if it feels kind of rich in the hip enrichment. And then if you want to go into pigeon, this is what you'll take the sand away off the leg, and you'll go into a different kind of hip enrichment. Okay, but where the spine is naturally arching is important. Okay, and it may not be something that you can feel comfortable with now, but I don't know, I've had plenty of experiences with exploring exercise potential for the spine, and if I do too much stuff that's rounding and rounding, even though it may feel good, then eventually I can have kind of a spike in back discomfort. So I'm trying to work on that rib expansion, which naturally means spine extension. And then eventually, once that area kind of gets into its path of spreading out, three-dimensional path of movement, it's helpful. So if you're in pigeon pose, you might feel the hips kind of balance a little bit. So you let the back of the pelvis relax to the tail and out to the sides. Okay, if you're seated, it's still pretty good. I mean, this one's nice. I can keep the ball, keep the sand, pretend I have it, lean forward, take my blocks up. I don't have to go far forward to feel it. I might just stay with this. This could be a good little homework exercise. If you're reading something, you can do this easily, huh? Okay, but feel where the balance is weighted into the seat. This is a great seat position. Take a few more moments, whichever one you're in, because we're going to go towards a big change in a moment to the wall. So which direction you're in, if you're in pigeon pose, okay, you're going to come forward with the right leg. If you're already forward with the right leg now, come forward, moving your blocks to the sides. Let's move them over. I'm just moving them to this side because I want you all to see where I'm going, but they could be on sides of your mat. And then take away with that right foot and let's move the bolster over to the side. I don't know where your wall space is oriented, but you're going to go there. So let's take ourselves to the wall spot with our feet to the wall. And the wall is crucial for this alignment stuff. So you'll have a blanket and you're probably folded like, you know, your general quarter fold. Sometimes probably a little towel would be easier on this one, you know, so these are a little bit awkward to use because they're a little bigger than we need, but you know, in time, maybe I'll get like a beach towel for this next time. Just sort out my cupboard, see what's going on. Okay, the closets. All right, so take a bolster in front. I want you to have it forward, down, straight in front. And you need to figure out how far you are going to be stretching under the bolster from your orientation with your hinge at your hips and your knees. So reach forward so your hip flexors, the front of the kind of the thigh lids are on the bolster. And then when you lower down, okay, you're in kind of a surfboard pose, right? That's more of this position. So when you push into your feet, try to get the balls of the feet to have some expression into the wall and also your heels, right? This is a good one to look at your feet and just, I know it's going to get your neck moving too much probably, but you want to find there's a pretty good balance of the lift of the heel at the wall. Okay, this is for the knees, right? This is to help with our knee supporting into that joint. So when the elbows are down, the bolster only gives you so much protection, but it's pretty good. Feel the knees maybe a little bit off the ground. We don't want them dropping to the floor, but if you need to take a break, bring them down, no problem. And then once you assign the pressure into your feet, feel if you can slide your hands back. And then I want you to actually bring them out and forward. So it's kind of a V reach with the hands. And then a little bit of lift like you're working on tummy time here. Okay. Tummy time. So if the feet are lightly pushing off the wall, the heels, bring them back. Try to. If it hurts, it's too much on your spine, then of course you do what's helpful. But what happens is our postural foot pattern starts to come in play if we don't keep the feet pushing in. Okay. Now hands slide back in so they're near the bolster edge, palms down. Relax the knees. Okay. Hands forward, and if you can put your chin, everyone's different lengths. So some of us are going to feel their chin on the edge of the bolster. Some it's going to be farther forward. So you're lucky because you can rest on your hands. But for some of us, we can barely get our head towards our hands. So find your elbows going out wide. Smush the breathing muscles in the front so they have to push into the bolster to expand. Okay, and let the feet push a little bit into the wall so you continue that slight awareness into the knee. Okay, now Slide the hands besides the bolster, pull the elbows back by your sides, lift your head, shoulders trying to move back, and then push the feet into the wall. You can keep the knees down. It's probably going to be easier on your back for this one. Stretch the arms back besides the legs, shoulders pull back. If they're rolling down natural, see if you can bend your elbows a little bit. And then hands press, come up with the ribs so you have this nice support in your upward dog, upward chest. And then come back to table and move the bolster across in front of you, right? Across the mat, horizontal. And then as you move your hips forward, you let the arms decide if the hands turn out or not. Okay, so when I come down, that's a little forceful on my wrist. So next time you move back into your child's pose, turn your hands out a little bit. You could try it, and then let your body weight move forward into your hands and arms and lift the gaze, lift your eyes up, your head, your face, and then come back to table, and then reaching the hips back towards child's pose. Okay, now cycle the motion. So you push into your hands, you round your back a little bit, and then you guide your weight forward into your hands. Good, and then you let the hips guide down. They don't touch the floor, the hips don't push down purposely, and lengthen the front. Okay, let's go one more time. The focus is lengthening the back side. The hands could be adjusting. And then lengthening the front side, the front path. Okay, now let's try to put this together one leg at a time. Okay, so hands are going to turn closer to spreading out the fingers versus turning out. And then feel when you lift up, well, you're going to lift a leg in front. So you can have your knees apart to try this for your back muscles. You can have the knees together and then step forward. Okay, I like knees together, and then I get my blocks under my hands, all these things you learn to make it comfortable. And then step the right foot forward, and we might use the bolster on this, we'll see. So lean into your lunge. Okay, let the left thigh either stay knee on the blanket, or you could lift up the knee. Doesn't mean you get extra credit, but it may feel better for some of us. Take a few more moments if you can with the knee down, stretch the quad. Blocks can be low, they can go higher than that second setting. Just be aware of how much you rely on your wrists to do it. So try to lift up in the middle, use the power of the leg. Okay, now lift the back knee. And so I'm going to scoot my foot positioning to the wall so my heel is up at the wall, but I'm not trying to get the bottom of the foot at the wall. That would be kind of crazy, huh? So guide the right knee above the ankle. Okay, so this is where you might find that reaching the chest forward is useful, of a connection into the psoas, into the left hip flexor. Okay, now turn the back heel so the side of the foot is against the wall. Slide the right foot back and then work your way up to standing so the hands are on that right thigh and you're stretching the front of the left thigh. This is great for the hip flexor. So stay with that variation of a lunge, stretching open the front of the left hip. Hands could be down, you could let them rest by the sides. You could bring your hands up to hold up to your hips. You could stretch your hands to the ceiling, but it's nice just to work on this lower frame and take some care into the knee joint, especially the left knee because it's turning out. The right knee may get some information. Okay, now lean down. So feel how you scoop into your leg muscles to do this versus the pelvis, because your foot is kind of pressed into the wall in a funny way. So it's hard to maneuver the hip. So when you lean down, yep, you got to find where the balance is on the bottom of the right foot. So feel like you're filling up the bottom of the foot, pressing all the corners of it into the ground, and then pivot the back heel and step the left foot to the right foot. And then come forward so that Yeah, maybe you have the bolster in your hands. Maybe you have your hands on the blocks. Or perhaps you ditch both those ideas and reach your hands to your elbows and let the spine stretch fully with the weight of your head and your arms. If you need to step your feet farther out, do so, but make sure they're parallel. Make sure all toes are trying to go forward. Great, and let the spine simply stretch. The leg spine, the spine, all the way through the brainstem. You know, where you relate to this forward motion might be for some of us hands on the bolster. Some might not prefer to dangle. So you can feel a little difference, I think, with blood pressure, honestly, since it does alter it quite a bit in this pose. Sometimes having some weight pushing in, not your feet necessarily, but your arms, does help that you're feeling a little more success with stability. Sometimes we feel this when we touch something with the hands. So you decide, but when you're starting to come out of this one, your version of it, I want you to bring your hands to the blocks and then step the right foot back. And let's guide it so we stay high first, right? So we'll stay upwards first in this side, because we're going to cycle towards the ground soon enough when we lie on our back. Whew, we earn it. So feel where the back heel is a little lifted. You know, and the blocks low is a different type of challenge for the muscles. So I certainly kind of need them high up. But when you pivot the back foot to the side of the foot, you know, feel how your hip trails back, how the spine arches. The left leg reaches forwards. And then when you come up, notice if you're really far forward with your foot, like this time you decide not to slide it back, then you have to kind of make up for that with the stretch and this left knee forward and the right hip. So that might be too much. You can make it a shorter stance. So it's okay if you shorten the stance or you decide to take a walk around the room for this one. Okay, so feel where the lunge is to the front of that right thigh. And as the balance moves into the hip, into the knee, remember you can shorten the stance, you can extend it. You want to keep that hinge into the knee, the left knee. And then as you guide yourself forward, pivot the back heel up the wall and then lower the back knee. Now, if you're going to keep it slightly lifted for a while, if you're going to lower it to the blanket, you might be able to stretch the left foot farther forward and kind of design that sensation gradually into this pattern around the flexors, the hip. The side muscles might get a little bit of position, but you want to note, you just notice how you push your foot into the wall. Because we're going to do bridge next, so it'll be nice to work on this chamber, you know, into the hip, into the flexor in the front. Well, at least a hip flexor. Okay, find where that lunge is coming from with your body weight leaning. It's still connected, it hasn't snapped apart. Surprisingly, huh? You know, when you guide your lunge forward, breathe, try to lift up at the spine, necessarily the ribs forward. Okay, now push back and let's take a moment where we shift our blocks to the side, hands spread out, hips are centered, round the back. Okay, now feel the reason of the movement pattern in the spine and the joining forces of the ribs. Okay. All right, now lean forward. Okay, you're going to slide any knee that you like especially forward so you can lower down to your hip. And then we'll turn towards a wall. You're gonna need the wall on this one. You'll use your bolster and you'll place it at the base, push it against it flat, and then take a blanket behind you. I would unfold it so it's very flat and you have a low height under your head, and scoot to the bolster with your tush and your feet, and then have just a little itty bitty blanket so you have slight cushion, but nothing that's going to change the arch that much. If you've got a ball, you're going to add that between the knees. If you don't, just use a block. It'll be easy on this one, just use a block. It'll be just as well. So what I like about having something between the knees is it's a natural spacer. The only thing I don't really know is if my feet are even with their path of movement. So putting your feet at the wall could be useful here. You don't have to stare them down, but feel how they touch into the wall even. Let the spine arch kind of flatten out here so you can massage into the back. Okay, and then as the hands lower down besides your hips, push into your feet, and then as you push, it presses the spine down. Okay, now the feet going up the wall makes the lift a little different. So it makes it higher, but it's hard to keep the traction. So if you need to scoot closer to the wall, do so. But I want you to lift up your hips so that circulation goes up to the shoulders, and then lower back down. Step your feet onto the bolster, lift your hips. Yeah, you gotta kind of grab the ball or the block a little bit further in with the leg muscles, and you have your feet down the bolster. And lower down the spine. Okay, now keep the feet on the bolster. Inhale, lift the arms overhead, behind you, on the ground. Hips are up, and exhale, lower the spine down. Okay, massage through the spine. Scoop up through the upper to lower back. Inhale, lift the hips. Exhale, lower the spine. Okay, take a few more cycles, but you might decide to try this with the feet at the wall. If it gets a little slippery, the challenge usually is like your shirt, stuff like that can be, it's like it gets stuck, it pulls up to your throat. So when you're at home, you can make however comfort you want to work the pose if the shirt's becoming a problem. But when you lift and lower, you're going to let the spine design its motion slow. When you find that impact, you might find when you base the tailbone down that you're also trying to relax the hip flexors in front. That's really like the next level. Okay, so bring the knees into the chest, take the ball out, and then if you've already had that block, you're going to need 2 of them. So you'll take a couple blocks. I would scoot a little back on your mat so that you have more length into the wall, but observe first. So we'll push into our feet, we'll lift our hips up, your feet can be apart, they don't have to be squished together. Slide the blocks in so they're under the back of the pelvis at the second height. It doesn't go higher than the ribs, right? It doesn't go any higher, it's just low back. And then you stretch your feet to touch the wall. I came back too far. So I'm going to scoot a little forward. I want my feet to push perfectly into the wall so I get this to open up in the front. Okay, so give it a try. If you want to add sand to it, you can put a layer of sand across the front of the thighs. And that could be nice to experience the hip flexor kind of assignment. But you're probably working a bit on just getting this block pack underneath you. So they are side by side. They're second setting, side by side, touching blocks. The glutes, well, actually not really the glute, but the buttocks, right? If you're close to the wall, it's interesting how you're kind of opening up through the front layer of the thigh and then roll the shoulders back and down. That'll help you get closer into the wall. I know this body alignment is so interesting sometimes. just to kind of get things so that you get nice balance with your breathing muscles. Because gravity has you, you know, and the longer you live, the more it kind of moves you in these postural cycles of despair. So these postures can be a little much to celebrate, but some of them are really good. So you can have your elbows, and you don't have to stay in this robot position, but it might be interesting then to let the palms open by the sides. Some of us can't really have them this close to the side. The shoulder just doesn't like that. So they might be a little bit out. Okay, but push your feet into the wall. Yeah, it changes the pressure into the lungs, into the respiratory tree, the bronchial tubes, the throat. I can tell by this time in class. Let the spine stay centered for a few more breaths. Push into the wall. Great. Nice work. You know, if you're using, you know, a good dose of effort to maintain this kind of fresh skill of the legs stretching open in the front, and you want something a little bit more easygoing and do this for a while, what you could do another time would be not only maybe sand here, but even better, you could use a belt, wrap it around the legs, your yoga belt, and make sure it's buckled firmly and take it around the legs so it keeps them held. And then you could eventually kind of relax your feet a bit. Just keep this skill going into your flexors and the ribs. So anyway, that's an idea to do. We just didn't add it. It was extra credit. We're going for it. Okay, now bring the knees in, pointing the knees, lift up the feet. This won't be our only legs up, but we're coming up to it soon. But since we're already here and we can get an inversion, we'll add it anyway. So let the legs lift. The two blocks could be a little different feeling than the bolster at the wall. Sometimes this is helpful, right? Because it's just a different impression on your back muscles. It's a little different. Okay, now try to keep the legs really motioning in and flexing the feet. Okay, the arms could be down by the sides. It's so easy not to flex them when you don't have sand. Okay, now as you bend through the legs, okay, try to keep the feet close together. This is important, feet together. If that's too much on your back muscles, then take the feet a little higher before you come out. Okay, you're going to keep those legs in that right angle and then let the shoulders press back and lower the feet down to the bolster. Push, lift up the hips and then slide the blocks out. And let's take a hip crossover. We're going to do two more poses and then we'll do our final one. So I want you to scoot back so that you have the option of making that blanket a little higher under your head. So roll it up to just a little bit more support. If you've got a sandbag, keep it nearby. And then you'll push your bolster to the right side of your mat. So it's straight by the side. And then it's not horizontal, it's extended down. You'll bring the left leg over to the right side and roll on the hips. Feel that you roll the back. So you cross over and you can add a ball if you have one to the back of the pelvis, right? This is helpful. It's closer to the gluteal fold than it is really sacrum, but everyone's different. Some seem to put it up closer to the base of the spine, sacrum-like, and then add the sand. If that's too much for you, you could have just the leg across onto the bolster and maybe a blanket on top of the bolster as well. That's just too much pressure on the hip. But as you open out through that left side, right arm is relaxed or resting on your body. There's no room around you to relax it. And feel your head roll to the left. Take a few moments here with the motion of the neck, relaxing the weight of your head over to the left. The head turns back to center and switch sides. So as you move your left leg back into the middle, you could take the ball out, slide the right foot in, bring your knees both together towards the waist, and then carefully craft the movement of the bolster to the left side of your mat. And then lean your body weight, push over to the right side of the mat and cross the right leg to the left to the bolster. And again, that ball is probably your main prop for that. I don't think you want to poke a block into the sacrum. So if it's not required, but you might find, oh, I can do this without anything. There's no need for the ball, but some of us have found that it's nice to use. It's an anchor for the spine. And then as that sand goes on that outer right leg, again, if you're kind of tired of moving sand around, don't worry, you can go without the sand. And it might be a lot extra for us. Some of us need something between the bolster and our knee, like a blanket or even a block could be used there if it's too much to get your leg to touch onto the bolster. But the right side is opening, right? You could have your elbow in more of a cactus position, elbow bend. You could have your arm straight out. Left hand could be out or onto the rib cage. So you can feel the breath moving. These final couple poses really kind of seal the practice, so give them a moment of your attention. And now a couple options for the last pose. I want to do something that brings the legs up and the pelvis higher, a little higher than the heart. So when we take the sand away, the last pose you might use the sand, right? So I'm going to offer a couple ideas for those that are not so sure, right? You'll roll to the left and you can either put your bolster against the wall and use your blanket for under your head. And you could bring your hips up to the wall. You need to get your sitting bones close to the wall on one side of your bolster and then swing the legs out and put sand on the feet. You've got to center yourself, okay? That's one version. That's probably 3/4 of us that'll do that version. And some of you might decide, I don't want to quite go there right now. It's not going to work in my space. So you can have your bolster bench. This one you want to use like a bunch of pillows in the house. If you got some bigger pillows or long ones, or a couch cushion is really good for this too. You can have your bolster on a block set and then your other blanket, and then you get your legs up. Okay, so you kind of that version. If you have a chair, you can put your legs up on the chair or the couch. And this could be just as well today. Okay, so if you're using this version as your shape for completing practice. You could put a sandbag at your shins. That's really nice to balance. If you have your feet at the wall, you put your sand across the soles of your feet. But carry your version into the cycle of breath. And this is not as much of an inversion as legs up the wall. We know that because the pelvis is low. All we have is the legs lifted, not the hips higher. So you want to find one that you can work with that you're comfortable. So if this is comfortable, and you're much better off being comfortable. So as the spine centers in the pose of choice, you let the hands rest either across the rib cage, resting your palms. I like to have the arms on the floor so I can center my shoulders back. And letting the mind center into breathing. Don't feel like you have to struggle into one of the poses that doesn't fit you right now. Finding what would be balancing for your breath. Getting the legs a little bit lifted. Feel the movement of the abdomen with the breathing. And alternate the breathing with the nose. If you can keep the breath in and out through the nose. If you need to use the mouth as that exhalation portal, that's fine. But explore breathing in and out through the nose when you can. You know, for those of us that have legs up the wall, we probably have sand on the feet. And I want you to bend the knees, slide the sand off, bring the legs back up. So that you are in chair shoulder stand. You can stay with the pose for just a little bit longer. And still feel the arms holding the sides of the chair, the chest open. Okay. Feel the span of the chest. If you're at the chair, you can start to bring your feet down to the back bar of the chair. Slowly release the grip and then start to slide back so your legs are elevated like we all have. And then if you have the sand on your shins, if you're up on the bolster, you might find you've got to figure out how to get that off. So it's easier on your back if you kick a leg up and then you let it roll over to the side and fall off versus tightening your back to pull your knees into your chest. It's not very helpful for our back. So take the easy route for your back's care. Yeah, feel the feet getting a little bit of release, just flushing out the circulation before they get stepped on again. And then guide your feet to the edge of the, well, if you're at the wall, you slide the knees into the chest and bring the feet a little bit up, touching the wall. Roll to the side for all of us and come around to sitting. And if you're at the bolster wall, you want to sit up against the wall so that you can use the spine traction, right? The sitting position, the back touching the wall. Or if you're center of the space, take a blanket, prop yourself up so that you can feel where there's a lift in the chest, there's an angle of the spine, and there's that back musculature and the front musculature that kind of try to mingle when you're sitting upright versus uptight. So feel where you have that balance in the middle, like you almost lean back. Having your back against the wall is really good for that one. And let the hands slide on the legs, and let's just take a moment merging the palms and surrendering down to the heart center. Relax the belly, breathing in, feeling support from practice guided. And exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart. Namaste. Thank you. All right. There's a few people here. Okay, let's see if I can hold on here. I get my recording off.